Welcome to episode 3 of Scope Creep. Today we're talking about what it actually means to show up as yourself in your business and how embracing authenticity has impacted our day-to-day operations, our mental health, and our earning potential.
But before we dive in, it's happy hour and we're spilling the tea on how our weeks actually went. So Liz, what went well for you this week?
So, if you guys know Jamie and I, whether through business or personal life, you might mistakenly assume that starting a podcast and sharing potentially unpopular opinions on the internet and just running our mouths is just like no big deal. And partly that is true, but this podcast is totally an exercise in vulnerability. And my goal with it is to make it look like it's not hard, but then to remind you that it's very hard because that's the truth. So having said that, the highlight for me this week, I think, has just been all the positive feedback that we've gotten so far.
Yes.
Seriously, people I don't know taking the time to find me on LinkedIn, find me in my inbox and write to me and thank Jamie for starting this conversation has been hugely humbling, and just the affirmation has just been great because it's not easy to just show up and be yourself. And we're going to talk about that today, but having that positive
Yes.
feedback has been great.
Oh my gosh, yes, I totally agree. That was also my high of the week. When the podcast came out a few weeks ago, when the first episode dropped, it was kind of like, okay, now we just put it into the void and hope it reaches somebody's ears. And wow, it has. We've just gotten like such great response, and so many people that I either know or, maybe know through somebody else or don't know completely, just reaching out and saying like, hey, thanks for talking about this stuff. Like, I'm so tired of hearing the false kind of narrative around owning a business. So anyway, it's been, I think the best compliment we've got was, I can't believe this is free. And I'm like,
I didn't
oh.
see that one.
Yeah, that was a review we got. And I was like sobbing at my desk because it was just like, that's what we want, is like for this to provide value for anybody who's like working through this shit. And it's not always easy. So just, yeah, big shout out to everybody that's listened so far and given us love. It's not going unnoticed. Like, we super appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Jamie, what was tough this week?
I have been in a roller coaster the past few weeks. I have this idea that I've been working on to like do some scaling sort of stuff in my business that doesn't feel gross and icky. And it makes me really excited. But then when I sit down to work on it, I get like analysis paralysis. I mean, I think anybody can relate to that. Like, you can have the idea and it feel really good, but then like when it actually gets into implementing it, I get really overwhelmed. So anyway, which makes me go like, is this actually a good idea? Am I doing this for nothing? I don't know. I don't think I'm doing it for nothing, but it's just like the heavy lift is really making it hard. So that's kind of my low point, is just like sorting through that and trying to push through it, even though I don't necessarily want to, but I do want to. It's hard.
You do want to. Yeah. And I think we all need to make a little bit more space to hold those two things at the same time. I have this big audacious idea and I want to see this goal through, but I'm also like stuck and or terrified or tired.
And or all of the above.
Yeah.
Usually that.
Yeah.
What about you, Liz?
Yeah, kind of similarly, I have had a big old anxiety flare up, as does happen from time to time. I've just had some kind of family bombs go off, and I'm grateful that I have, the flexibility in my job to step away and prioritize what really matters, without, having to shutter my business. So I've done a thing where I put an out of office responder on my email and stepped away from my inbox for a week. And even though cognitively I know like it's going to be okay, my clients are awesome. I'm communicating with them that I've had to step away for a little bit. Just the sheer act of detaching like that.
Oh, yeah.
Even though, like I said, in my mind, I know it's going to be okay. There's no such thing as a content strategy, life or death emergency. It's still hard. So even when you do have that flexibility, even when you do have that framework built in to reflect your priorities, it's still freaking hard to take advantage of it sometimes because we're still so much in this culture of hustle and grind and productivity 24/7. If you're not producing, you don't have value. And
Yeah,
we all know that's not true, but it doesn't change the emotional reality of the landscape that we're living in, and that can still be really hard. So working through that.
absolutely. And we always have that one person in our lives, regardless of what position we're in, that will, no matter what we're doing, will always send an email. Like they will
Yeah.
always, even if my out of office sends to them like 10 times, they're still blowing me up. And I'm like,
Yeah,
y'all just
relatable.
stop for a second, please.
Have some self-awareness.
Yes, please.
Uh,
That's all we ask.
totally, totally.
So before we dive in, we need to give a little heads up that today's conversation might ruffle some feathers. And if you've been
Yeah.
listening so far, you're probably not going to be surprised by that. But we're sharing some of our maybe unpopular opinions today. So spoiler alert, folks, this is what showing up as yourself in your business really looks like. And it means that you might piss some people off. So let's dive in. Let's dive into pissing people off, Liz.
All day, every day, Jamie. No, but seriously, I think lots of people talk about this idea of authenticity and transparency and showing up as yourself in your business, but nobody really talks about, okay, but what does it look like to do that? What on a given Tuesday for you, like what does it look like for you to be yourself in your business?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that I've struggled with, honestly. I mean, if anybody is familiar that's listening and if you live in Nashville, you probably are with the Enneagram,
Hmm.
whatever it's called. Liz and I are both Enneagram 8s, and so like being vulnerable, showing up in like every context with vulnerability is not our natural state. No, 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 no. So anyway, so learning to kind of show up as myself in my business and embrace that has been an interesting ride for me. But I think the biggest recent example of this, I always felt like we talked about this way back when in episode 1, which feels like an eternity ago, but like the idea of having to wear a mask previously at our old jobs. And that was like the first thing that I decided that I was like, I am not doing this. I'm not going to pretend that I am this like chipper, you can do it, go get them, girls, person to anybody, because I'm not 100% of the time. I'm not really chipper. I'm pretty sarcastic. So like my initial thought is just like my voice and the way I say things, whether that's verbally, written, whatever. That's like one foundational way that I show up as myself. Bring in the sarcasm, you know?
Love.
Yes. What about you?
So, admittedly, I had that same experience of the pain of wearing the mask and the divorce of my sense of self from my professional
Yeah.
identity and how that just ripped big old holes in my mental health. And so when I left the corporate setting, I knew I didn't want to do that and replicate that, but that didn't mean that I automatically knew how to do something different. So for the first couple years of being in business for me, it was a lot of trial and error. I think I still had this really ingrained idea of what like professional is was supposed to look like on the
Mm-hmm.
internet and in person. And I did all of this like really intensive and intentional kind of segregating between some of the personal work I was doing, I was really excited about, that was still kind of adjacent to my mental health work. For example, I wrote a lot about like sexual health and sexual expression and sexual identity and business. And if you know anything about mental health, those things are
Yeah.
deeply ingrained in one another, but I still felt like I had to keep that part of my work separate. And it still didn't feel good. It was closer because it was at least on my own terms. But for a while, I still really struggled with that. And I don't know if it was just, one day or one thing that happened, but I did get to a point where I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm having one website. I'm having like one digital presence. And this is how you can get to know me in all my varied and seemingly perhaps contradictory parts. And that was a huge game changer for me in my business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like leaving the corporate role and going into self employment like during COVID, I think that was like the thing that highlighted for me. Oh, I can't keep like these kind of things that are happening in the world and impacting me personally and impacting the way I work. Like, I can't just pretend those aren't existing. And I think
Right.
that was like the moment that I was like, you know, it's my business. I'm allowed to say whatever the hell I want. And if it like pisses people off, that's fine. You're not for me, and you're probably going to say something that pisses me off. Like that's we're human beings living in chaos. So what do you expect? But I think like when I realized like, oh, I can talk about like how shitty the pandemic's being handled on my Instagram, and like nobody really cares. Like,
Right.
and people that do care are going to show up. People that do care in like the way that they're like, oh, Jamie's stupid, they're going to leave, and I don't care. The people who are like, oh, hell yeah, they're like coming to my Instagram
Yeah.
or coming to my website to be like, hey, I saw you said this thing. Totally agree. Like you're kind of like pulling people in towards you with your unpopular opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if mine were unpopular really, but I was just speaking them. But I think like that is true for me right now in Tennessee. I mean, everybody knows major shit is happening in Tennessee. But when the Covenant school shooting happened a few weeks ago, I mean, I wasn't going to just get on Instagram and like post about my business. Like, oh, hey, I know this just happened, but hire me to do your brand strategy work. Like that feels
Yeah.
disgusting,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But I also knew I have a platform and I can reach people with things that I think are important. And so I was posting about like, hey, we need gun reform. That's the solution here. And I was like, if that pisses people off, then leave. Like
Yeah.
I have no shame in that. Leave.
Totally. Totally. And I think one thing, I mean, that sounds so straightforward, and I am right there with you. If you are afraid to be political in your business, then, you know, we're probably not going to be the best strategic partners. If
Right.
you think that me sharing my views on human rights violations in our country is off-putting to you, then I probably am not going to enjoy your company, working together. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. But I think we also have to acknowledge that last time we talked about barriers.
Yeah.
And I think especially for, um, little girls in our country are raised to be pleasing and deferential and to be likable, to be beautiful, palatable, and likable at all costs, and that's where our value comes from. And so this idea that, oh my goodness, like someone might not like me, it's such like a deep-seated rejection and fear that it might not even be conscious.
Yeah.
But I just want to validate, like if that feels hard for you, it's not because you're just, a weakling.
Yeah.
It's probably because you're raised in a culture where if you are inhabiting a female identifying body, you are told from day one that you're just supposed to be likable and to mind your P's and Q's. And so to do otherwise and to disrupt that is really scary at first.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I'm with you. One of the greatest things about being myself in my business is not just the fact that it brings like-minded people to me and I get to do cool projects that I think are moving the needle in a positive direction on our planet, but it repels Chad. It just like,
Bye, Chad.
hi Chad, like, and I don't have to have those awkward conversations. You're gonna take one look at my homepage.
Yep.
You're gonna take one look at my LinkedIn bio, and you're gonna know not only what I do but what I stand for.
Yeah.
And that's really intentional, and that feels really good, and that's been really healing to get to a point where I feel confident to do that. But it also brings a certain level of efficiency to our operations, right? Like, talk about lead qualification.
Yeah. I don't have to go through the weeds of like talking to people, filtering through them in my mind of like, does this person really bring me joy? I mean, it's like Marie Kondoing my client list sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, do I feel stress when I get on a call with somebody because I'm worried some topic in conversation is going to come up and it's going to be like, I don't know, weird or like, I don't know, it's going to boil over. We're going to get in a fight.
Yeah.
I don't want those things to happen. So it is like,
No.
yeah, like you said, like great lead qualification. I think it's also worth mentioning, like you and I are both solopreneurs. So of course we can speak our own truths on the internet and it doesn't impact like like we don't have employees that are like, oh,
Right.
I have to conform to this. Like we're not trying to get anybody to conform to
No.
our ideas. That's
No.
not what we're saying. And I think the beauty of being a solopreneur is that we get to show up as ourselves. And that looks different for everybody. If you own a, consumer packaged goods business, you're probably not going to get on the internet and spout every one of your opinions, but are you going to take a stance on some things, absolutely. Like that's just natural, and people want to know that there are humans behind a brand.
Yeah. And there's a generational shift happening with this that the data bears out around how, for example, Gen Z views how they evaluate the brands and companies that they are loyal to. And social justice is a part of that conversation. Value alignment is a part of that conversation in a way that I think historically it has not been. So we're also kind of in this, I guess, revolutionary time in business where all of a sudden um, it's it's not as safe for your bottom line for you to be quiet.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it's like I don't know, you catch more people like you when you are yourself, I
Yeah,
guess.
like
Like
attracts like.
yes, right. And it's not that like you need to work with everybody that's just like you, but it is like you grab the people who are interested in what you're saying and who resonate with that in some way when you are yourself,
Totally.
and when you're not wearing masks. Also, like when you're trying to navigate human emotions in this crazy world and then just pretend you don't have those to like keep business moving. Talk about burnout, baby.
Yeah.
Like you're going to downward spiral real quick.
Yeah, right down the drain. And your audience is going to smell the BS a mile away.
Oh, absolutely. Like
It,
it's like robotic. I think people think the opposite of being yourself in your business is being a robot in your business.
right.
And it's like, even if you're not comfortable sharing your most unpopular opinions, that doesn't mean you have to be a robot. Like you can still have authenticity and like show a sense of humor. I think a sense of humor is a great underrated way to show up for like as yourself in your business. And it's not necessarily, you don't have to make people laugh, but you can be fun.
Right.
Is that a
Right.
crime?
Right. And people, like, what do we always say? People buy from people, not brands.
Yes.
You could have the best, shiniest, coolest logo in the world, but that doesn't make someone trust you enough to hand over their hard-earned money.
Right.
You have to attend to both. Um, and I think just from a sheer, I don't know, efficiency is on my mind so much right now. No matter what business you're in, and this is so true for you and I, especially since we're in this strategy game, we're kind of in the business of solving problems,
Yeah.
like both for our clients and for their end users. And it's a lot easier to solve a problem if you have like a philosophical alignment on the best way to do that and how to treat the people involved. I don't care what the problem is.
Yes.
And life is going to be hard for you as a business owner if you are continuing to collaborate with people who don't view the problem in the same way
Mm-hmm.
within the same context. And it's not going to be fun and it's not going to be profitable. And you're probably both not going to have the greatest outcome from that.
Yes. Well, and I think similarly to that point, like in marketing, I think we're in a very unique place where we kind of have to know what the people we're working with stand for,
Hmm.
because we're in the position where we are marketing essentially their beliefs a lot of the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
especially in like service-based businesses or like personal brand sort of business. I had somebody, I don't know if they listen to this podcast. If they do, they might come for me, but they, I mean, total antithesis of the types of beliefs I would want to promote.
Yeah.
Um, and, a lot of like, don't tread on me,
Oh
Q,
boy. Yeah, I know where you're going.
QAnon.
Oh no.
And, as a responsible marketer, I was like, I can't in good faith put this work out there and promote it. And also, like, that's not true to myself. I'm also, if you really want to send this message out, you're going to get it out there regardless. I'm just not the person to do it. I am probably not the best fit for you because I don't believe what you believe.
Right.
Um, and I
Right.
think, if I was building their deck in their backyard, for example, I wouldn't care. But if I'm literally using their voice and promoting this content, it's a totally different story.
Totally. Totally. And I think that goes not only for values and beliefs, but also ways of working.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
and this person, maybe they listen to the podcast. I don't
Sorry,
know.
everyone.
I, I had a situation a couple weeks ago where I got a referral and it was from a like business specialty standpoint. It was a mental health outfit. It was totally within my realm of expertise. They had a content problem that I know that I could solve. Progressive organization, like so many things. I was like, yes, this is a fit. And we had some great conversations. We scoped it out. We negotiated on a retainer. And then I sent them my contract. And my contract is basically how we work together, what I will and will not do for money, and what you can expect from me if we decide to move forward together. It has everything in it from like
Yeah.
things like rounds of revisions, kill fees, basically protecting my ass. Because I've learned the hard way that you have to do that. And they read
Yes.
the contract and they decided they didn't want to work with me.
Because they didn't want anybody with boundaries. They
They
just
didn't
wanted
want
somebody
anybody with
to push around.
boundaries. Yeah, and I was like, man, like it threw me because I was like, I did not get the vibe from you that you just wanted somebody you could push around. I always ask, have you worked with other consultants and contractors?
Yeah.
Or, because there's some client education that you need to do around that working relationship if this is something new for them. No, they seemed experienced. And yeah, whenever you get a no, it's like, damn it. I don't quite understand where things went wrong. But in thinking about it, I was like, oh, they would have been hell to work with if
Yeah.
my contract is pretty like standard. It's nothing crazy. It's
Yeah.
simply like pay me on time,
Is that
um,
too much to ask?
respect working hours, and do not engage in scope creep. Like
Yeah.
these are the important things that I need you to understand if we're going to work together that will allow me to do my best work for you in the way that you deserve. And if that's not okay with you, again, like sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. It's also funny. Like it's one thing to I've had clients like redline a contract and send it back to me and be like, "Hey, these maybe they like conflict with something in their agreement,
Yep.
whatever."
Yep.
Or they're like, "Hey, can you extend the payment date to 30 days rather than 15?" Whatever that is, like I'm always happy to work with somebody, but it's another level to be like, "No."
I was shocked. I've had that too.
We're
Like,
not
hey, yeah, like our
Yeah.
billing cycle is this, or things like that. Where I'm like, let's meet in the middle and find a way to work together.
Right.
This is not a hill I'm going to die on. But yeah, it told me a lot about them.
Yeah.
That
Also, there's a reason we're called contractors. Like, what?
yeah,
We have a contract.
the contract. It's actually illegal for you to treat me like an in-house employee.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, if anybody needs to hear that, y'all get a
Yeah.
contract and know that if you are a 1099 employee for somebody, they shouldn't be treating you like a regular employee.
No.
PSA, PSA.
Say it again. Um, but that's me. Yeah, that's me as a person with strict boundaries, showing up as myself, as a person with those boundaries, and I was essentially rejected for that. But it's ultimately for the greater good, and that is hard. Those no's are hard to get. But like I said, I learned some of these lessons the hard way. Earlier in my career, I try to always assume positive intent. When I share, some of these contractual terms, I try to give some context. Like, I don't expect you guys to rip me off. I don't say that necessarily, but I
Right.
don't go into these like expecting to be scammed. If I thought that, I probably wouldn't want to work with you. But I've learned, like in this situation, in good faith, where things can go sideways, and it's my hope that the other party involved would respect that.
Yeah. I'm also happy to be proven wrong. Surprise. But sometimes I'll get on a call with somebody and I have like a gut feeling about I don't know what it is. Like sometimes I'll
Yeah.
just maybe I'll Google somebody or whatever and I'll talk to somebody and they surprise me and they're like the person that maybe I'm looking up online is not the person I'm talking to or whatever. And it's like, oh, really, you just have a messaging issue. And
Yeah,
guess
that's
what?
why they
I can
need
help
you.
with that. But
That's why I
but
need you.
I'm happy to be proven wrong. And maybe I think my gut reaction is to think the worst of people first. Like, hello, I have major trust issues. I'm not afraid to admit it. But I think the worst of people and let people prove to me that they are going to do right by me, respect my boundaries, all of that. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's
Yeah.
pleasant to be surprised by that sort of thing.
It
Also
is.
unpleasant to be surprised in the opposite direction. But
Right. Right. And, hello, legacy of corporate trauma, though. Like,
Yeah.
both got to be where we are in our businesses in no small part because we had to leave this toxic setting that is absolutely designed to break human beings down, erode trust, and exploit. And so I think it makes a
Yes.
lot of sense that we're still carrying some of that legacy. And sometimes that can be unhelpful in the way that we evaluate potential collaboration, but working on it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, you mentioned contracts, and I want to share something that one of our colleagues, Sarah Streesey, puts in her proposals.
Oh,
She
yeah.
actually, we've worked together. Liz, Sarah, and I have all worked together on projects, but when we started talking about this topic of like being yourself in your business, finding people that you want to work with that align with your values and your purpose, Sarah immediately came to mind because she has this chef's kiss wonderful thing in all of her
So
proposals,
good.
and I'm just
So
going to
good.
read it. She did give me permission, and she's the founder of Good and Ready Design Co. She just took this a step further and outlines who she doesn't want to work with in her proposal. So like if somebody gets this and they're like, oh shit. um, but she says, okay, in the proposal on like the first page, we're a great fit for clients who are ready to elevate their brand. Great. Feel like their current visuals don't match their true personality or culture of their business. Great. Etc. Etc. Then she goes on to say, we're a perfect fit for clients who are looking for a handcrafted touch, who are part of a female owned or female led business, etc. etc. And then finally, this is the icing on the cake. She ends the page with, who are we not the best fit for? She's calling them like she sees them. Clients who are looking for a quick, fast, or cheap design solution.
Mm.
Clients who already have a strong idea of what they want visually as a designer. I can tell you, those are the worst clients. Um, Clients that would be happy with an out of the box design solution, meaning something that you could buy on Fiverr or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then my personal favorite, they are not a good fit for clients or businesses or organizations that promote fat phobia, homophobia, racist ideology, or gender discrimination.
Chef's kiss.
It's as easy as that, y'all. Put it in the proposal because if somebody reads that and they don't agree, guess what? They're telling you they're not your client. They
Yeah.
just saved you so much time and headache and grief.
And alternatively, if someone reads that and is like fist pumping throughout the whole thing with
Yes.
big hell yes, they're going to be so excited to invest in your services and to collaborate with you. And that trust of like similar philosophical views and values, it's already established from that moment. Um,
Yes. Absolutely. And like
what
this isn't some like I don't know, whatever y'all want to like woke bullshit or whatever. Like and, like you can put this in your proposal. You can say I don't want to work with clients who are woke. I don't know
yeah,
why you wouldn't, but okay. You can put that in your proposal if
you
you want. I'm not
absolutely
saying
can.
only woke people can do this.
Yep. Yep. My fiance is a taxidermist, which is a fun
I don't
conversation
think
for
I knew
another
that.
day. Yeah. And, so we get all kinds of interesting supplies in the mail. And as, as you can imagine, like that industry, although he and I are progressive, like that industry leans a little right,
Hmm. Hmm.
just because historically more rural communities engage in that kind of stuff, etc. Um, but he got a box the other day that just had some forms in it, and it had giant Jesus fish all over it. And, that was, I think, an example of this where it's like, cool, like this is your belief system. This is
Yeah.
what's important to you. This is a value for you and your family business. You can just slap that all over the box. And it's not like just because we're not, we don't share that ideology, we're still happy to do business with them, and for some people though
Yeah.
that might be a deal breaker, but it's not. It's all optional. Nobody has to work with you.
Yeah.
It's just a way of maybe, differentiating and bringing your people closer to you in a
Yeah.
more kind of authentic way.
I love what you said. Like, nobody has to work with you. And guess what? You don't have to work with them either. Like, I think once anybody realizes that like my business or is not make or break on this one deal, that's
Yeah.
like a turning point.
Well, yeah, because if I lose a client, that means I lose a portion of my income this quarter or however long the agreement was structured for. But if I lose my job, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody experiencing a layoff right now knows the pain of that, and that is so widespread and so anxiety provoking. It kind of ties back to some of the conversations we've had about stability, but
Yeah.
it's a little
Absolutely.
different. Like if you're in a 9 to 5 and you have bills like everybody does, you don't get to pick and choose who you work with.
Yes.
You know,
And it's, I mean, it comes with risk though too. Like you said, you can lose a portion of your income if you express your beliefs and somebody disagrees. But I think, and I'm not one to be like optimistic, but on the other side of that, like it frees you from this work that you might have been doing to do something better that does align. Like I think we've all had those, if you work with clients or in sort of any service based business, like, oh, this income's great. But then when it goes away, you're like, oh, wow, I'm free.
I'm free. And the mental shift that then happens, like, I am very woo critical. I don't, put a ton of stock in some of the manifestation bullshit. But I have witnessed firsthand when I am in the headspace of I'm closing this door because I'm honoring myself. Like
Hmm.
whatever energetic shift that happens or mental shift that happens somehow always seems to find me in a position of receiving something better, something more aligned. And I think it's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's the universe or just the power within myself kind of shifting my energy away from negative and then in doing so building capacity for something positive.
Yeah. And I think you're also like training your gut, training your brain when you say no or you walk away something from something and you kind of learn that lesson in maybe a hard way. Maybe it was an easy lesson to learn, whatever. But when you walk away from that, it's like, okay, I don't want that again. And
Yeah.
so you know what to look for um, in future clients or future opportunities
Mm-hmm.
that just feel better and feel right.
We're right. And this isn't a new idea. I'm sure, our listeners have heard some version of this from a girl boss, perhaps,
Hmm.
um, saying how, showing up as yourself in your business or something like that, is the key to success. But I want us to take a minute and share like examples of that because those seem to
Yeah,
be so hard to come by. That this is just not something we're making up, but this is something we've lived and actually experienced as business owners. So
absolutely.
making this concept, like how has this made a difference in your work and in your business?
Yeah. So I think, so I mentioned this very briefly previously, but I was a spin instructor at a local studio in town. I have always been like into, I don't know, maybe I won't say always into this, but for the past like 5-ish years, I've been very into like athletics and like workouts, that sort of thing. And there was a point where I wasn't sharing any of that on my Instagram. Also worth mentioning, I do not have like a personal Instagram and a Jamie R. Cox Instagram like business thing because it's like having split personality. Like I
Yeah.
can't do that. So everything's in one place. And I really struggled when I started teaching spin. Like, how do I share this part of my life with this other like brand business part of my life with my also personal life of like me and my dogs and my husband hanging out, going on vacation? How do I meld all those things together? And one day I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to post about spin. I want people to come to my class. I want people to know
Yeah.
that I do this because I think also it impacts the way I run my business too, like in the way I help other solopreneurs. Anyway, when I started posting about spin things, athletic things, nothing really changed for me. It was just kind of like a part of my progress and part of like my content. But about a year later, about a year since I started them, I actually got hired to work on this super cool athletic company
That's right.
because they saw, oh, she knows this industry. She's not like super ingrained in it, but she knows it. And she
Hmm.
knows like that power that comes with physical activity. So I got to work on that project, which then led me to work on another athletic brand project. And it's like, I'm not trying to niche into that industry at all, but it was like, oh, just showing that I know this stuff, it's like paid off incredibly.
Totally.
Yeah. What about you?
Subject matter expertise,
Yeah.
lived experience, obvious interest and passion for the industry, in addition to all of your high level expertise as a strategist and a marketer.
It's also that idea of shared values, though. Like, I know in my personal well being, mental health, physical health, all of that, like, I know that that plays into my business health too. And so when they see, like, oh, this person sees in this specific instance, the value of like an athlete's mindset, like that was that value alignment that we were both looking for. And we maybe didn't know what the value was.
Yeah.
You know, but when we saw it, we were like, that's the one.
It is. Yeah.
What about you? What are some examples of times you like showed up as yourself and it, you know, went to earning potential?
Yeah. So, I think I mentioned this earlier, but like you, one day I just decided to stop kind of bifurcating my digital footprint into like real human Liz and business Liz. And I just started sharing some of my personal work. So for example, I wrote an article for Salty Magazine, and that had a sexual identity and very feminist take on individuality and business practices. And
let's go.
I believe it also had like a modeling picture of me that I'd done for a local lingerie boutique as like the header page.
Love it.
And, you know, sharing that as part of my portfolio was really scary at first, but that's just an example of what came to be the number one decision that I've made in my business, which impacted my bottom line the most. The ease with which I had yeses and steady lead generation that happened after this decision to just start sharing actual opinions on not just stuff that I'm doing in my life and that type of authenticity, but just like my takes on industry trends, what I think about the world of work, about mental health and technology, about being a woman in business. All of a sudden, just combining those parts of myself into one holistic being made some of those things so much easier. I think two things that stand out for me were pieces of feedback that I've gotten from clients in kind of the discovery stage. And one being, I want to hire you because you have a voice, is what someone said to me. Now, you know, they were looking at things that I'd created in my own voice, but it was obvious that I was a person who could hunker down and deliver insights in ways that made people think. I wasn't just, you know, one of the masses. I was standing out from the crowd and from the status quo by being myself and publishing as a quote thought leader, but in this like really human and informed way. And they were like, yes, if you have a voice for yourself, I'm confident that you can help us find ours.
Yes.
And the other thing that somebody said to me once, he was like, your personal brand is kind of sorry, not sorry. And I love that. And I was like, you have no idea. There's no higher praise.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There was no
that's
higher
like the
praise.
best compliment. They didn't think it was a compliment, but you were like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think in that setting, he absolutely meant it, because that's what he was trying to channel for his brand. He was a disruptor in the sex tech space.
Yeah.
And was very much wanting to, again, stand out from the crowd, say smart, informed things, but in a way that makes their audience pay attention. And it takes the right person to do that. And so for me, honing my own personal brand, honing my own position as kind of a non-traditional thought leader, sharing all parts of myself, even the ones that might, you know, make people not want to do business with me, ultimately has led me to the greatest earning potential that I've ever had since starting my business.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. I think about, I'm glad that you brought up that article, because I remember you publishing that article, and I remember that like pivot in your business, and I loved to watch it. Like, we weren't super close then, and I like was watching it from afar thinking like, fuck yes. And I love that so much. And I think it also took, I don't want to be like, oh, you're so brave, because like, I think anybody that's non-cis white male identifying knows that putting yourself on the internet
Oof.
it's like an open forum.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Mm-hmm.
especially I see this a lot in like the fitness industry that I said I'm involved in. Like, I don't know why, but the trolls think it's like acceptable to just comment on everybody's
Gross.
body. And it's like, I'm
Gross.
not even, no, no. And it's like, I don't know. I think it does take a certain level of like, fuck it to,
Yeah.
to, to get there and to like post that stuff and just, know that it's going to come.
Yep.
Um, and
And
just like let it go. And it's also like,
and
yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to be reprimanded or shamed for being myself or living my truth or not hiding part of myself. Like, I don't know.
no. And this is not prescriptive. Like I want to be clear about that. Like what I chose to do with my brand, with my body, that's what worked for me, and that's what made me feel healthy, whole, and a good amount of money.
Yeah.
That recipe might not fit for you, and that's okay. But the point here is finding your version of that that feels good. Um, I, I might have a more unusual cocktail of what that might be, or like beyond the pale for a lot of
Yeah.
people. And I know that. And I know that. And there's a fine line between being like salacious and
Yeah.
using sexuality to, gain attention in a not really sustainable way. And like just showing
Sure.
up as yourself as a human being and who's, that's part of your
Yeah.
identity that gives you strength, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, it's not prescriptive. It's just you have to find an honest version of what works for you and do whatever you need to do in your life to be brave enough, even if it's scary, to try to show up in that way.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's like there's the like jump in version of that. Like, and that's more of like what you're describing is like, this was the very far end of showing up as myself in my business. There's
Hmm.
also like the toe dip in the water. That's like, I'm going to share this meme because I think it's funny.
Yes.
like,
Yes.
and I know other people will too. And like, whether that's a meme that has absolutely nothing to do with your business or it's like small business meme, Instagram share,
Hmm.
just share it because it makes like the point of running a business by yourself is that you get to be yourself. So
Yeah.
like, don't be afraid to show the weird. Let the
Show
weird
the weird.
let the freak flag fly, I guess is the saying.
Amen. Even like, if you're going to invest in the tedious process of defining your mission, vision, and values, which you should do, you absolutely
Yes,
should do. And then
absolutely. And you
messaging
should
clients,
hire Liz or Jamie to do it.
they know I'm coming for you. You're doing that work. I'm going to help, but it's, you have to do it. If you're going to take the time to do that, first of all, it shouldn't be more than a paragraph long. But second, like it should
Yeah.
be something where when you read it back to yourself, you in your gut you feel like a solid fuck yeah.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Just start there. Just start there. It doesn't have to be that you're solving all the world's problems, although maybe you will be, but just something that feels true and good and honest. I promise you doing that is going to shape your orientation to your business and your work in a way that's going to make you feel so much more empowered and so much more ready to tackle all the things that are going to be hard no matter what.
Yes, absolutely. So I know, and anybody who's listened to the episode more than today knows that we share the highs and the lows. So we're not going to say all this without saying that being ourselves has also lost us business. Surprise. So Liz, do you want to share maybe a moment or an experience that you've had where it's like, oh, that, I lost something because of this?
Yeah. I mean, I already shared that one example, right? Like that recent one about, oh,
Yes.
you
Yeah. The
are,
contract.
I have boundaries. You don't want me to have boundaries. We're not going to work together. I also have really, I am not the cheapest solution out there. Putting it
How
lightly.
dare you?
I know. I know. I don't price by the hour because I don't want to be penalized for efficiency. And
Hmm.
so I get a lot of sticker shock for clients that like maybe aren't really fully ready to take advantage of what messaging strategy can do for their business. So part of being myself in my business means pricing appropriately, market rate based on the value that I provide. And so sometimes doing that means that, I'm not a fit to work with somebody. And I have the choice to either like lower my prices. And that's not to say I don't negotiate. Sometimes I
Sure.
absolutely do based on the situation and the client and the length of the project. Um, But yeah, being myself means not being the cheapest one in the bunch and pricing based on the value I provide a business. And sometimes that means I get a no.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe you can relate to that.
Yeah, I absolutely can. I mean, I think I told you this when it happened, but I am similarly like I have a process. I do this process because it works, and because all of my clients find value in it. So I know what process, I know my process. I'm not willing to budge on that process. Now, again, do I negotiate the price for that process? Absolutely. Like, I want to be accessible. One of my values is being accessible for small business owners. I own a small business. I have owned them in the past. I know how expensive it is. So I want to be accessible, but I'm not going to cut corners on the process in order to do that. And I had somebody recently tell me I was excessive. And I don't think they knew what a compliment that was for me because I'm like, yes, I am excessive. Like,
Oh
I
my
am too much for
God.
you.
God. Our merch is writing itself.
Yes,
Sorry,
it
not
really
sorry.
is. It really is.
Excessive. I want all these other t-shirts.
Excessive. Yes. It was like really, I don't know. I think there's like some stupid girl boss thing that's like, maybe if somebody thinks you're too much, maybe they're not enough. And that was the one time that really resonated with me.
Okay. Like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So
Yes, absolutely. So that was one time. That was like a very specific instance. And then also like I think acknowledging myself and like my values has allowed me to step away from some different groups that I might have been a part of, whether that's like networking groups or friend groups, professional groups, whatever. Which means I lose out on like referrals that I might have gotten from there. And I don't know, in the long run, that's not really hurting me though, but it is like a, woulda, coulda, shoulda situation.
yeah, I
But
mean,
it feels better to not waste my time in a place where I don't feel like myself and
yeah,
all of that.
yeah. I mean, similarly, I think it's easy to be like, oh yeah, just find your tribe, and the
Oh
rest will
God.
be gravy. But like, real talk, any type of othering that happens is hard. Even though I am not welcome at certain tables, whether that's from a
Yeah.
networking perspective or just a philosophical perspective, and I know deep down that's better for me, it's better from them, it still never feels great to have
Oh
a
yeah.
loss of like maybe it would be like you said referrals or networking or just support. Sometimes it feels like there's this huge imbalance, like there are so many more people who think that other way than the way that we approach this stuff, and so that can be
Yeah.
kind of lonely sometimes. So I think, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh yeah, like it's going to be super easy for you to differentiate yourself and show up as yourself, and you're going to just automatically be surrounded by like-minded women. It can be a lonely road to be yourself sometimes.
Absolutely.
Even
And
if
I mean, it's never fun to be excluded.
no,
It's not.
no,
And I think like if we can all lead with that intention too, like knowing it's never fun to be excluded. So maybe we adopt a more inclusive way to like, what does that mean for us? And
yeah,
for me personally, I'm like, okay, I need to be more inclusive to whatever. And that's different ideas, whether or not I work with those people or not. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah. How can we not only repel what doesn't work, but call people in and invite people into this space and into these conversations, like you said, whether we work with them or not.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody can gain a little bit of value from listening to our podcast, by the way.
I like.
The bottom line of this conversation is that you don't have to be a robot. The era of needing to be a corporate clone to make a living is over.
Yes.
We are real people with real emotions, opinions, and experiences, and you can't just skip over that and pretend they don't exist. We make work valuable. Hello. So, with that in mind, we have some shit you can't skip while you're building your business. So, first and foremost, think about what it would be like to be yourself in your business. What does that mean for you? Whether that's like the toe dip in or the, head first dive. How can you show up as yourself in your business today? And if you're feeling nervous about that, we encourage you to play out the worst case scenario. What are you worried might happen if you share that part of yourself? What's the worst thing that could happen? Is that even likely? Probably not. But, think through it, balance it out. And then as a fun challenge this week, We would love for you to share something about yourself on whether that's like social media, in a client meeting, in your newsletter that maybe clients don't know. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. Maybe it's that toe dip in the water. Like share the funny meme, whatever it is, show people you stand for something.
Or just a little bit about who you are.
Yes, just like give us some personality. Come on, you don't got to be a robot, baby.
Hell no. Well, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Scope Creep, everyone. We're your hosts, Liz Salego and Jamie Cox, and we're going to be back in 2 weeks to talk about how to sell yourself without selling your soul. So, taking all this kind of newfound self awareness about who you want to be in your business and actually applying that in the sales process to deliver a service or sell your product.